I'm here because I want the world to know about you. I wonder if you can see like the impact that you're having by sharing these conversations. What is it about the desire to record them and share them with the world?
I don't think I had any resources to navigate what it means to be a man, but also how to navigate relationships, how to navigate the very confusing world of sexuality, how to regulate myself emotionally. I didn't know any of that, and I needed guidance. And I think that was one avenue that I was seeking and yearning for guidance.
Mm.
And I think there was something about me that had relentlessly explored these things. So I have gone very deep and I know what works and what doesn't. I think that is something that I really pride myself on, and that's something I'm very confident on. And so I think for me, there was such a sense of fulfillment or meaning with the fact that I could bring individuals on that I really believe in, that I know are doing really good work in the world, and essentially create a platform that makes it less confusing for other men, because I felt like I was in the jungle and I just had my machete and I just had to move through it and I didn't have a path. And I wish I had a path. And I think in some ways I want to create a path that might not require as much suffering as I needed.
Welcome to the Heart of Man podcast, a podcast for any man seeking to live in alignment with his deepest core and lead a life of profound meaning and connection. I'm your host, Alex Lehmann, and I'm here to empower you through transformative conversations, eye-opening insights, and practical wisdom. Join me now as we venture into the heart of man. Let's dive in. All right, everyone. We're switching things up a little bit for this episode because this time I'm the one being interviewed on my own show by my dear friend, Edward Dangerfield. A few months ago, he reached out and asked if we could do this. I didn't know exactly why, nor what I was getting myself into, but something in me felt it was the right thing to do. What followed was a deep exploration into me as a person, my motivations, my background, my interests, some moments that have deeply shaped me, the work I do to help people, and the struggles I see men facing today in our world. I found this podcast to be a lot more raw than many of my others, and as I continue with the podcast, I notice my growing desire to keep these conversations deep, authentic, raw, and even a little messy. I truly believe this kind of honesty is a currency that I and many people I meet are longing for in our fast-paced, ever-changing lives. So if you've ever been curious about me and wanted to know more about the man behind Heart of Man, I'd say this is a great place to start. And moving forward, I want to bring up more dialogues like this, ones that go deeper into who I am, as well as my teachings and perspectives on masculinity, creating transformation, relationships, and intimacy. So if there's a particular topic you'd like to hear me speak on, let me know in the comments or send me a message. And so, without further interruptions, let's dive into this conversation between myself and my dear friend Edward.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to this upcoming episode of The Heart of Man. I'm incredibly excited and as well somewhat nervous. As you might see, I'm actually at the opposing side that I'm usually on. And the reason why is because I'm going to be a guest to my own show. And I am as well followed with my dear friend, Edward Dangerfield, who has as well been on this podcast numerous times. And you had, I don't know when this was, but a few months ago, where you had offered this as an invitation. And frankly, I never asked you why you wanted to do this. And there's one thing that I know about you is that you're very, I'm going to say, meticulous and particular about the time that you spend and spending it as well in, I'm going to say, places or investing in places that are meaningful to you or important to you. Um, so I was just like, okay, without even knowing why he wanted to bring me on, um, I agreed to it. So here we are. And I guess before I hand it over fully to you, I do want to direct this question, and I am really curious. What was your intent behind wanting to be a host? I recognize I don't think you want to pursue a profession of being a podcast host or anything like that, but what made you want to do this?
Yeah, thank you, bro. Well, yeah, welcome to the Heart of Man, and I'm your host, Edward Dangerfield. I'm feeling really playful and mischievous as well, which is
Nice.
really, really fun. I'm going to get to your question, but I'm just going to take total control right now.
All right,
Yeah,
go
so
for
here
it,
we go.
man. Go for it.
So I want to start with a tough one, right? So I just want to start off. We're going to warm you up gently. What's your favorite flavor of ice cream?
Probably pistachio.
Good choice. Me too.
Pistachio.
Yeah.
Pistachio is a
Yeah.
good one.
Ettore gelato or Gaia?
Pardon?
Ettore gelato, favorite?
Ettore gelato.
Yeah,
Yeah,
got it. Okay,
classic.
good. If you were to pick a main course, just like a delicious main course that you would really like to eat, what would that be? Oftentimes.
Are we talking like a cheat meal, or are we talking like a?
Yeah, go nuts. Whatever.
I love a good pizza,
Oh yeah.
or I love a good lasagna in
Yeah.
those moments when I really want to treat myself.
Yeah.
But I think in just in my general life, I like to keep it quite clean
Yeah.
and lean. Just with some good fats such as avocados and maybe a good steak or a good piece of chicken.
Yeah. Got it.
So
Great. Here we go. As you're answering this, what are you noticing the area of your body that is most online?
right now, I think it's my belly
Mm.
and a little bit of a flutteriness in my chest.
Yeah, great. Let's
Yeah.
work with that. So yeah, you initially you engaged me in the conversation around like why I wanted to do this, and it was just this. It dawned on me like I'm not a podcast host. It's not something I do. It's not something I'm really too motivated to do. But one thing that that I really enjoyed around Heart of Man is seeing the impact, and it dawned on me as we were in here in the studio. I think 2 sessions ago, I was just like, people don't know enough about you, and they don't know enough about your story, and it just felt really important to me to engage with you a little bit more about this,
Yeah.
so people could understand a little bit more around like why Heart of Man was created and why it's so important for you and the impact it's having. So that's why I'm here, and I'm going to follow on with this is just to kind of set the tone a little bit as well. I was chatting with the guys there in reception, and I just wanted you to know that I paid for the session today.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, and I wanted you to receive that, and I also wanted to share that with the listeners and with the viewers here, just to know that I really appreciate the work that you've done. But as I tell you that, I've chosen to be here and share my time with you, but also to pay for this because I think it's also really important. How does that land for you?
I feel somewhat humbled at the beginning and somewhat touched. Yeah, it brings up some tenderness around receiving and also that I'm worth it to receive such a gift.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
it's good. I even bought you the coconut as well. It's on me as well. All right.
did you also sort out the jasmine tea? Were you the guy who did that?
Jasmine tea was on those guys. I know you well. All right, let's get into it. I want to contemplate a little bit around like firstly like a 2-part question. You can answer it however you want, right? But one is kind of like I want the listeners to have an understanding of like your average week. So like what's a week in the life of Alex Lehmann? Like what does that look like for you in terms of working with clients and podcast? And then I want that to sort of flow either into or the other way around. It's your choice, right? Isn't it like what is this chapter of your life that you find yourself in right now? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I think there is an incredible variety in the way that my week shows up. I mean, so usually, like, if there's one thing as well that individuals who'll know me really well is that I really dedicate a lot of time towards my own personal practices. So a lot of that, like, I usually like to spend around 2 to 3 hours in morning practice, and that is devotional time towards meditation. And it's going to be some form of movement practice in the morning. This could be either in the form of running, going to the gym, doing a yoga class. And I have always valued having range within the way that I move. And I like having explorations where I can really go into strength-based movements, but also can be very agile and flexible at the same time. So this is why I really value diverse ways of moving. There's going to be always some form of breath practice and maybe as well a more, let's just say, a subtle practice, something like a qigong practice. So that's usually how I like to start my day. I'm a very avid reader, even though I haven't been so much an avid reader at this stage of my life, but I usually like to start my morning in some ways with some form of inspiration, some form of curiosity, as it really um, prepares me for the day.
Mm.
Usually, I like to keep my mornings free of any appointments. That is not always available to me. However, when it is, then I usually like to um, really take a zoom out of my week to week, day to day, and really look at, okay, like what really requires my attention at this stage, but also where would I really like to place my attention and energy. So, I think I've always placed a lot of importance towards living my life in such a way where it's not coming from this place of should, but
Mm.
actually it's really coming from a place of like deep alignment to certain values that I want to live out. And that is something as well. My friend Jordan, as well, mentor at the time, has really deeply supported me on, like, just to really ensure that I create a life of vitality and aliveness and joy and um, curiosity and passion and community. And I think this is something where I really want to design that first, and then
Mm.
I design the business around that. So
Mm-hmm.
that's always been something that I place a lot of value on. And usually, yeah, during noon, afternoon time, that's usually when I start client work. And again, there can be a lot of variety around that. So it could either be an online coaching session with someone overseas, or it could as well be an in-person session. And usually when I work with someone in person, there's going to be a combination of coaching and breath work.
Mm-hmm.
And outside of that, my sessions or my time could look like preparing for a podcast
Mm.
interview,
Mm.
having a podcast interview.
Mm.
It could be, leading a breathwork circle, such as I did yesterday, maybe even a men's circle or men's workshop. And then as well, just spending a time with people that are important to me, and yeah, investing my time in meaningful ways. I usually like to close off my days and evenings with a walk. Usually like to do that during sunset time, and that's just a way for me to introspect and reflect and um, yeah, just inquire into the day and how I spent my day, and really use that as well as a time to really get to know myself on a deeper level. So that is how my day to day looks
Yeah,
like, I would
beautiful,
say.
man. Thank you. Yeah. And then, how does this kind of reflect into like what this chapter of life is for you
Mm.
that you're in, or maybe you're in a transitional phase, or
Yep.
hey, how would you kind of describe this right now?
I would very much describe it as a transitional phase,
Yep.
actually, and this is something that we have as well quite regularly spoken about.
Mm.
And what I would maybe describe as the stage that I was in before was just this relentless commitment towards a certain refinement and a certain deepening within my own skills. So there was a lot around skills acquisition over the
Mm-hmm.
last few years,
Mm.
but also a deepening within my own embodiment.
Mm.
And I think this is also something that I really learned from you over the years, that the depth of one's work really comes not so much from one's knowledge, but really from one's lived understanding and lived experience, but also how we're living our day to day lives and also what we're transmitting as a result of that.
Yeah.
And I've really come to see that just with the depth of work that I really am aspire to do, and as well the transformation that I really want to create, for me, I've just put so much importance towards that. And I think there's also a conversation here around integrity.
Mm.
I would say integrity is arguably my highest value. And for me, I really want to ensure that I'm always of integrity as I pursue this work, and as I as well lean into these teachings. And there's a certain humbleness as well that I like to lead this with, considering as well that, I'm comparably perhaps to other coaches or practitioners, or um, any form of somatic practitioner, let's just say, quite young, still 32. And so with that, there was a humbleness with the recognition that, many individuals have worked decades towards getting to the place where they are. And so I really recognize the importance of um, putting in my own reps. And
Yeah.
I would say that's really what I've been doing
Super.
over the last 5 to 6 years. And, I think it really hit me, especially when I came back from my first trip to the States this year, which was back in March. I just came out of, this pivotal period where I was training with John Wineland and as well David Data, both individuals I was so inspired by and who have whose work deeply touched me and moved me. And I came out and I realized I think I'm good.
Mm.
But not just good in the sense that I have done enough work on myself, which is an element of it. But I think another aspect to it is I don't think I need to fix myself anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that was something that was still unconsciously driving me
Yeah.
with this subtext of there's something wrong with me
Yeah.
and I need to overcome that. And I think there was something within that time period where I just came to realize, hey, there's nothing wrong with me,
Yeah.
you know? And of course, I'm human and I'm a work in progress, but simultaneously, I have a lot of value to offer to the world. And so coming to, this is a long-winded way of
It's great.
saying this, but uh, this chapter that I really see myself being on right now is really bringing all these learnings and all these experiences and all this knowledge and all this wisdom that I've learned over the years in very accessible ways to a lot of men who might have not had the blessing or the fortitude or even had the resources to go on this journey that I've been on. Like I've been relentless for around 9 years on a journey of self-exploration. So many individuals don't have that, nor is it maybe their interest. And I've really gone all the way from very esoteric teachings to, very I'm going to say, in the world grounded practical teachings. And I see myself very much being a bridge for that. And this is how I really um, see this chapter that I'm on, that I want to be a translator of that, essentially to support men, but also couples on this path of a deepening in connection to themselves, but also in relationship to others.
Yeah, I love this. This is really great, right? And my intention to be here today was to give listeners, some deeper context around the host and the motivations as to why you've chosen to invest your time, energy, and effort, money into the creation of this podcast. And I want to know, like, what was it 9 years ago that ignited that relentlessness within you?
So at the time, I was working as a paramedic, and I guess I wasn't fully aware of how broken I had felt at the time.
Mm,
Experiencing, and again, I didn't have the language at the time, but looking back at it now, what I could really say about myself is that I experienced chronic states of anxiety,
mm,
and there seemed to be a flux between, I would have these moments of deep anxiety and then deep states of apathy as well,
yeah,
arguably depressive tendencies.
yeah,
And I had very little self-esteem for myself.
yeah,
And I just had this deep sense of internalized shame. And simultaneously, I was working as a paramedic at the time, and I would see things that most individuals would simply not see. I would witness things, I would experience things, and I would see individuals when the masks fell off. I would see them in their most vulnerable life situations. Sometimes, it would often be with the themes of life and death. And I would meet a lot of individuals at the end of their lives. Some were older, some were less. And it was a very impactful time for me because it really drew my attention towards how do I really want to live my life? And what is really most important at the end of the day? And it was heartbreaking for me to just witness what I saw in a lot of those individuals, but also what they articulated to me. And I think the biggest experience that I noticed with a lot of individuals was this sense of loneliness, this deep sense of regret
mm,
with the way that they had lived their lives. And particularly at this stage of their lives where they were at their most vulnerable, it seems like they were on their own. And it just made me really reflect on, okay, like what is essentially the meaning of all of this? And where do I really want to place my attention? Like one of the things I reflected on this morning is that quite early on, I would say, I, the illusion of like this external shiny object that, you know, this fallacy of, if I get there, then I'll be happy, dot dot dot, you know. I saw that disrupted quite quickly, in the sense that I would see that within my dad relentlessly. But I think what I'd also witnessed in him, with his relentless pursuit, and the ways that, I was somewhat forced to follow him on his pursuits towards deeper happiness or fulfillment, um, I saw a deep state of dissatisfaction. And I think within that, it really questioned all the ways that a lot of individuals might be seeking for an internal sense of meaning or fulfillment or some form of connection. And it really reflected upon me what I would really like to do with my life.
Yeah.
And, there was some, let's just say there was some, and happy to go into that if that is of value, but, I had some deep instances during my time as a paramedic where I realized, shit, I really want to, something needs to change.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
And
this is good, right. If I was to synthesize this, right, essentially what's happening here is you've grown up in structures of culture and society reinforced by your father that have validated that the pursuit of happiness is outside of you. And through this like really deep sense of compassion that you have, you train as a paramedic, and I mean that's very deep and meaningful work, right? That's pretty big trauma work, and you've exposed yourself to a lot of individuals in their last moments, and you've exposed yourself ultimately to death, to letting go. And what I'm hearing is, as you've consistently seen this, the theme that keeps coming up is this sort of like this idea that people have wasted their time, that they haven't valued their life, that the preciousness of it, and that drives you into a coexistence of both anxiety and at the same time like deep despair.
yeah.
Yeah, is that's kind of,
I mean, you expressed it definitely better than I did.
yeah.
I felt like I was fumbling with my words a little bit.
It's beautiful, right? It's alive and it's moving through you, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, thank you for sharing that, bro. I imagine then that this ignited it. I wanna move forward into that more deeply to from 9 years ago to now. But before we do that, I want to go back and just touch into a little bit about your childhood. I know you lived between countries, and I'd love for the listeners to understand a little bit about the hybrid of your cultural experience between Canada and Germany and your upbringing and just curious around some elements there.
Yeah, I mean, like, me being somewhat of a hybrid, I think that is definitely the appropriate term. And I guess one thing for individuals to know is that both my parents are from Kazakhstan. So I grew up in an immigrant family in Germany. Both my parents met in Germany, and I was born in Germany. And from an early age, I already recognized, oh, there's something different about us. And just the way that we do things, the cultural norms and the traditions that we have and the ways we think is simply different.
Was
And
the food different as well, or
it was,
yeah,
yeah, it
yeah,
was. I mean, particularly at the time, my mom was cooking a lot of Russian food. She doesn't
yeah,
cook so much anymore
yeah,
of it. I'm not the biggest fan of Russian food, truthfully.
yeah.
Um,
Oh, it's lasagna and pizza. We're aware of that. Yeah, it's good.
so yeah, there's
Yeah,
been adjustment and
yeah.
change around that. But yeah, I
Your
guess
spiritual Italian side is coming through in the
that's
food.
it.
Yeah,
That's
it's
it,
good.
man.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I see that the theme of belonging came through very strongly from
yeah,
the beginning, because I didn't want other people to know as well that that I've of Eastern European heritage.
yeah.
And because always had this fear that if they were to know that, maybe I won't be accepted for who
Sure.
I am.
Yeah,
So I think there was already from an early age, there was this deep sense of sensitivity.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, I've had an interesting dynamic between both of my parents. I've always looked up to my father in many ways, but in some ways, his presence felt somewhat emotionally and physically absent, and there was a certain level of unsafety that I somewhat felt. Whereas, the experience with my mom felt somewhat overbearing,
mm,
and where in many ways I couldn't really feel that I was able to really live myself out, that I
yeah,
could really go out and pursue. And I would say naturally, I'm very adventurous, risk taking. I was very boisterous at the time, but I think in so many ways, if I were to live that out, there was this fear that I might not be accepted.
yeah,
So there was this deep consciousness already from a very early age around how do people want me to be, and who do I need to be in order to belong to an
Yeah.
environment, right?
Yeah. Good.
Um,
And what age was it that you moved to Canada?
I was 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, so essentially this came from my father, who, had migrated to Germany and had a very difficult time as well to, um, I guess, integrate into the culture there. And as we have some relatives as well in Canada who had migrated to Canada from Kazakhstan, he had been there for a few times and essentially had convinced my mom that this might be the right move for us. And so, yeah, from one day to the next, my life absolutely changed.
It's a bold move. It's a
Yeah,
really bold
it
move of your
was.
parents, right?
It
With
was.
a 10-year-old to
Yeah,
move from Germany to Canada.
yeah.
And so you settled in Eastern Canada.
Yeah, we were in Manitoba for one
Oh
and a
yeah.
half
Okay.
years.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, of
So
all
right into the
places, in the
prairies, right?
prairies.
Yeah. Well.
It was ruthless. And if I
Yeah.
just reflect on it as well, I mean, I think my prefrontal cortex at the time wasn't very developed, so
Yeah.
my capacity to judge the experience was also very limited.
Yeah.
But if I look back at it now, I mean, the summers were just hot, musty, and like a lot of mosquitoes, whereas in the winter, I mean, it was just absolutely freezing.
Yeah.
And then when I was 12, we ended up moving to British Columbia, where we spent the majority of our time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, how do you think that those impacts for you shaped then, like your lens on like culture? How would have that have shaped your lenses around masculinity and growing up? Was there a noticeable difference between Germany and Canada that you can reflect back on, or perhaps you were too young to really? I mean, just
Yeah, I think I was too young at the time, and I would have been oblivious to this conversation. But, I think in many ways, simply through osmosis, I had learned a lot around masculinity and what it means to be a man through my father.
yeah,
And I had a very typical, somewhat stoic father who was very emotionally suppressed and repressed.
yeah,
But simultaneously, there was also a very erratic, emotionally erratic nature to him.
yeah,
And, I actually look back to it with a lot of understanding and compassion now if I think about the fact that he didn't speak the language and he literally brought his entire family to another continent and was seeking to provide for them and support them. And I can only imagine the amount of stress that he was in. But naturally, because he didn't have a capacity to regulate that stress, th- that eventually leaked out, in so many ways. So I had experienced in many ways his absence and essentially not feeling really his support in so many ways, not really feeling his guidance in some ways to support me, particularly through those very pivotal stages, such as my teenage years.
mm,
But also, there almost seemed like a deep disconnect between emotions, where it's like there would be such a shaming around the capacity to express and the capacity for our humanness,
mm,
essentially. But ironically, he was very emotionally erratic himself.
mm,
And
mm,
there would be like expressions of anger would be very welcome
mm,
in the family
mm,
and somewhat accepted.
mm,
But something like tears and grief,
mm,
absolutely not.
yeah. Thank you.
So I think that is a huge element that
So,
came
I
through.
mean, this is then like one of the big drivers for you to get into men's work
Hmm.
and to explore, yeah, your own inquiry around masculinity and the way that you're sharing. And then beyond that, what I'm hearing is that it's kind of shaped the way that you've explored your own personal journey and motivated you. In essence, we have your father to thank for Heart of Man podcast, right?
In many ways, yeah, and I've actually as well reflected on that for a number of years. And it's interesting because I don't believe it's just my father. I think there was also some very impactful experiences that I had within my teenage years during school, where I just received such a strong imprinting, of course, not just from my father, but also I learned a lot about what is okay and what is not okay, especially during my school years. And I was as well bullied.
Mm, thank
And,
you.
essentially that created a lot of stress on my system
Yeah.
because here was this weird German guy, quote unquote, and was vastly different from most individuals who don't come from an immigrant background. So, in some ways, I had always stood out and was somewhat of a weirdo and somewhat different. So naturally, I was teased, and then I was well verbally and physically. abused. And then I would come back to an environment within my family where I essentially didn't really feel safe.
Yeah.
So that just caused and created a lot of stress within my nervous system that essentially just led me to freeze up and hide and avoid and suppress and distract myself in many ways.
Yeah. Thank you.
But essentially what I'd learned in many ways is that men are not safe, and I don't want to be anything like them.
Yeah. Yeah. When you speak into that, how's your body responding, and does some tenderness still move through you there?
I noticed maybe a little bit of frustration and anger towards the fact that I was put in that situation, but also others,
Yeah.
and that we receive such messaging,
Yeah.
and just how damaging this messaging is,
Yeah. Thank you.
and how I see as well how this particular messaging at these very developmental stages of our lives, how they as well ripple out decades into, whatever maybe business, someone builds, or whatever lives they essentially end up leading, and then as well how they end up being in partnership. I mean, I see that in myself, but I also see that with many clients that I work with. And there's definitely some anger and some frustration and hurt around the fact that um, we are actually submerged in such messages that essentially end up impacting the rest of our lives in these ways.
Yeah, thank you. Really honoring that frustration and anger, and it continues to motivate you, right? And welcoming that in. Have a sense, that you're explaining how, yeah, you've been an outsider all of your life, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, there's this lack of safety that you've then felt because of that. And I'm curious, what motivated you? 9 years ago, we touched into this idea of yeah, the the sort of the wasted life, along with that sense. Yeah, of loneliness and despair that you were seeing in people who were dying,
Yeah.
that coupled with this sort of lack of embodied safety,
Hmm.
what is it about, yeah, the therapeutic range that you've explored? What is it that's enabled you to create safety within your own system?
Yeah. I think it was in many ways a combination between, I'm going to say, a top-down approach. So for me, it was really about, especially the first few years of my life,
Mm,
were really about a relentless commitment towards awareness,
mm,
understanding the workings of the mind,
mm.
but also really learning that this capacity to, I'm going to say, meta inquire into my own thoughts and really reflect around, like being able to as well go a few layers deeper with some of the surface level thoughts that would be coming through. And at the time as well, Buddhism was something that I was very inspired by. At the stage, I think at the age of 25, I was introduced to meditation. So that was also a
How
capacity
did that arrive for you? How?
after a breakup.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you, bro. Yeah, yeah,
I really wasn't able to handle with the emotional dysregulation that was coming through.
yeah, yeah.
And
Breakups are rough.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
And I had no capacity to actually move through the stage of grief. And no
Yeah.
one could actually support me with
Right.
it.
Yeah.
And essentially, I was just looking for some way to work through this.
Yeah.
And I mean, I didn't have any access point to personal growth at that
Right.
time.
Yeah.
I didn't have any friends who were very interested in that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't even know what got me into meditation. I think I definitely like know it was through the app Headspace.
Great. Yeah. So, I mean, there's the heartbreak, and there's immense suffering,
Yes.
a lack of internal resources
Yes.
as a 25-year-old, which of course, like many
Yeah.
25-year-olds can relate to, and me, of
Yep.
course, as well. And then with that, a lack of community or friend group,
Mm-hmm.
probably especially in men, right, that were
Big time.
able to hold you in grief.
Yep.
This kind of like suck it up culture, or just get on with it, or
Totally.
get over it by getting under someone else, kind of thing, or however that looks. Yeah. So there's 25-year-old you, and gets on Headspace and starts entering into this opportunity to witness the mind and
Mm-hmm.
consciousness and thoughts.
Yeah, and it very much surprised me actually, because I just ended up sticking to the practice for a few weeks. And it was a few weeks into it where I really started noticing a change and a difference where I was like, wow, I can start to follow my thoughts and I can start to question some of my thoughts. And I started realizing that some of the things that, um, let's say, I was entertaining at the time were just not true.
Mm,
And I was able to create a bit of space from the emotional experience I was having and detach myself. And that, in many ways, felt like a superpower that I was very enticed by. And it was something that I wanted to continue pursuing and exploring. So that really got me as well into deeper stages of meditation and ended up doing a Vipassana. And, that's also been a practice that I've been relentlessly as well bringing through my life as well. In the first few years, I had explored many different wisdom traditions and wanted to as well go to numerous different countries to really study and explore them. Um, you know, I remember my time in Nepal and India being very impactful for that. So really diving very deeply into yoga philosophy and as well Buddhism there. And I think that was something where I was somewhat introduced, let's just say, to embodiment. So this is where my foot in the door started coming into more bottom up approaches.
right. You talked about how initially it's through headspace and meditation
Yeah,
and the top down,
yeah,
right? And then at some point, yeah, you still got, it's no longer maybe that you're motivated by as much pain and suffering, but
no.
there's curiosity there, or what's the quality that's alive
There
in
was
you in that?
definitely a curiosity.
Yeah.
I've always seen myself as an explorer,
Yeah.
and I've always liked, like the role of like Indiana Jones, and I've
Yeah. Yeah,
always
sure.
had this relentless pursuit for exploration.
Yeah. Right.
Initially, it was very externally motivated, and I was traveling through numerous different continents and countries. But eventually, that had just shifted because I was living a life of hedonism and womanizing and like relentless pursuit towards that because I couldn't do that in those early stages of my life
Yeah.
because I was just simply so frozen
Yeah.
and stuck, within my nervous system imprint.
Yeah, so there's an awakening and an enlivening
Yeah,
that's starting to happen in
yeah,
those years of your early 20s. You've
yeah,
stepped out of, yeah, the group of your family
yeah,
and the Canadian culture. You've
definitely.
started to move and travel.
Yeah.
And then as these experiences, they're thawing you out to the
Hmm.
possibility of a more vibrant life.
Exactly.
And then that starts through the travel, you start to recognize the impact it's having just on a deeper level within you, physically, emotionally, and even spiritually.
Yeah.
And then you move into this world of somatics initially. Was that initially through your yogic practice of asana, or was it something?
Absolutely, yeah. It
Yeah,
was the yogic practice of asana,
yeah,
and then um, as well, I had a really good teacher who was teaching us about pranayama.
yeah.
So that was also something I actually very actively pursued.
So you start touching into the breath, right? And
Yeah.
now you're starting to use this sort of mental awareness
Hmm.
and observational awareness and self energy. You're starting to use it to move breath. And then you start to connect the
Yeah.
relationship between, yeah, your conscious awareness and your breath in your
Yeah.
body. Yeah,
Yeah. I remember as well during the time 2020 when COVID began, and I naturally as well started exploring like more softer and gentler approaches, such
mm.
as restorative yoga and yin yoga. And that was also, I was starting to access ways of regulating my nervous system. Again, even though I didn't really have that language at the time, but it just felt really good.
Yeah, great.
And sorry, I started diving into that as
I
well.
love this. What was your first introduction to like the style of conscious connected breathing?
I mean, it came through essentially immediately as soon as I arrived to Bali.
Yeah,
And I mean, this came rather unexpected because I remember I was working with a coach at the time, and she had done a breathwork session with you, and she had given me your number. And I had shared with her that I had this desire and inspiration to pursue deeper men's work. And she had mentioned to me, "Oh, he's part of a men's group. Maybe you should reach out to him."
yeah,
And I did, and you mentioned there was no space within it. But I don't know how I came to it, but then I just looked into the website of Breathwork Bali,
right.
and I was very intrigued. And at the time as well, I was listening to so many podcasts and was hearing about these ways of breathing where we can access non-ordinary states of consciousness, which I personally hadn't experienced yet. So there's always been such a curiosity around just trying everything out. And that's what I've really done in a confident manner. I've literally tried everything out. And I was just like, okay, like let me just come into this. And It was very intriguing, when I came into that first session at Serenity 2, um, this beautiful, very humble wooden construct. And it was interesting because I remember when you started leading the circle, there was a sense of softening within my nervous system that I really started noticing as you
Mm.
really spoke about this practice and these teachings. And I don't think my mind could really capitulate what my body was really recognizing, but there was a sense of like, oh, this is it. Like there was a sense of connection that I was finding here that I couldn't find anywhere else yet. And then, I dropped into my first ever journey. I think it must have been 20, 25 minutes into it. First of all, I started sporadically laughing, and that was very surprising for me that I could access that. And then just this deep wave and deep layer of grief came through.
Mm.
And it was really profound for me, first of all, because I was still very emotionally suppressed and repressed at the time. But I think what made it so unique was that I didn't just have access through the breath of really expressing all this, but the ways that I was supported through it. And I recognized as well how important the touch work was at the time, as well, having been touch deprived my whole life, and just the value that I really found in, essentially I learned through this practice and through as well breathwork Bali that I can go into these experiences and that I'm safe to do so and I can come out on the other side. And like I still remember to this day, like I came out and everything felt more colorful. My vision was somewhat wider. And I just felt this really deep soreness on my left shoulder. I remember communicating that. And I think I just looked over to you and I was like, what the fuck is this? I had this like just this facial expression of shock, I believe. And then I think I just bought the 10 pack and I just started coming every
That was
week,
it.
man.
Yeah, that was it.
Before we jump back into this episode, I want to take this short moment to speak to any man listening who's ready to go deeper. The man who longs to feel at peace with himself, who knows he's capable of more, who can sense there are parts of himself he just hasn't yet been able to reach. The man who craves real connection and fulfillment in his romantic relationship and a more passionate, satisfying, intimate life. Through my work, I've had the honor of supporting my clients through incredible transformations, both personally and professionally. Here's what some of them had to say about our work.
I was able to fully reconnect with myself, which enabled me to fully reconnect with my partner.
And I was just blown away by how skilled he was as a guide, as a coach. He really met me where I was at.
Yeah, thank you, Alex, for this amazing time. You changed my life. And it's so crazy what's possible in such a short time.
Don't think twice. Sign up, take the leap to join him in any of his courses and programs. You will not be disappointed.
I feel more confident, more grounded, and in control of my emotions.
It was just a beautiful and magical experience, and therefore I'm going to work with him in future for sure.
As men, we often overlook our emotional needs, but Alex is someone you can truly rely on to help you work through them. I could not recommend him higher.
As you can hear, I've had the privilege of walking alongside men and couples through deep and lasting transformation in the way they live, lead, and love. And while my work continues to grow and evolve, one-to-one coaching remains my favorite. The intimacy, the commitment, and the depth inside the containers are undeniable. At the time of releasing this episode, I have 2 spots open for my one-to-one coaching. If you notice even a slight inclination to take this next step, my encouragement is to follow that and reach out. You'll find a link in the show notes to my website, or you can send me a DM on Instagram. It would be an honor to explore how I can support you on your journey.
This is beautiful. I like, getting a sense, for me at least, of this ramp up to this moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the level of natural like suffering and difficulty that you've been experiencing, and some of these other chapters that you've gotten to. This last 4 or 5 years has been really immense for you, right? In how you've grown, in exploring so many different modalities and integrating them. I want to spend just a little bit of time exploring like what we talked about range, but what can someone expect in a client session with you? Like what does that process kind of look like?
I'll do my best to articulate this, but I
3
think this
minutes.
is where I'm going to be fumbling
I'm
with my
kidding.
words. But
Yeah, yeah.
I think my gift in many ways is my capacity, my responsiveness, but also the range that I have. And I think what they can expect really depends on who the individual is in front of me, but also, their unique life circumstances and their patterns. And I think a gift in many ways that I've nurtured, but also naturally have, is this capacity to perhaps look through an identity that someone had created and like perhaps see even the fallacy behind it and look at the ways that they had to adapt from their natural way of being.
Yes.
And from there, and this is like, just a very organic process, there's an inquiry around the aspects of themselves that they've had to shadow
Yeah.
over the years.
How is it that you have that ability to do that?
Well, first of all, I would say it's because, so a few things here. I think I've always needed to be incredibly sensitive, aware, and attuned to my environment, and this came from an early age. Like there would be moments my dad would come in and I would know he's in a good mood or he's not in a good mood. And I think I really needed that sensitivity and I needed that attunement.
Got it.
So, first of all, there's that element, and I've had to really amp that up from a very, very young age.
Yeah.
Another aspect to it is just it speaks to the degree of fragmentation that was present within myself
Thank you.
and just the ways that I was divorced from numerous different aspects and expressions of myself, and how much chaos it really created in my life. And so the work that I do was essentially the work that I had to do with myself to really return back into wholeness.
Yeah, it's beautiful, bro.
Like this is really what it's about.
Yeah. So your recognition comes from the recognition of it within yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
I'm celebrating you. Thank you,
Yeah.
bro. I'm we could be very complete here in what you do in terms of your practice. You'd have a very good life and it would be very meaningful. Why the podcast? Like what is it about taking this next step of sharing the work in this way? Why is that important to you?
I've always enjoyed podcasts, and I think this was one way that I had really started to, I guess, get introduced to developing myself. And I was very inspired by it. Really opened my world to the incredible individuals out there doing amazing things and also what is possible. And it was fascinating for me to really witness these really raw, authentic, real, transparent conversations. And it almost felt like I could just be a fly in the room and listen to these really raw, tender conversations. And there was something about it that was very impactful for me, with the depth of authenticity that was present, because I think there was such a yearning in myself to actually bring that same authenticity through and have that capacity.
Yeah,
So,
this is beautiful, right? What I'm actually, it comes back to my intention, this sort of like deep desire of like a deeper sense of learning around the person, right? There's a difference here that I'm quite fascinated in and I want to go into. I suddenly realized that like mostly you're interviewing people because of your own fascination, right? And I know you really deeply. I'm here because I want the world to know about you. I wonder if you can see like the impact that you're having by sharing these conversations. You could just have these conversations alone. Like you could invite me out for lunch. I'd be happy to chat. What is it about the desire to record them and share them with the world?
I don't think I had any resources to navigate what it means to be a man, but also how to navigate relationships, how to navigate, the very confusing world of sexuality, how to regulate myself emotionally. I didn't know any of that. and I needed guidance. And I think that was one avenue that I was seeking and yearning for guidance.
Mm.
And I think there was something about me that had relentlessly explored these things. You know, we had spoken about my investigator and how relentless I am in my capacity to investigate. And, you know, I'm a very good student. So I have gone very deep and I know what works and what doesn't. I think that is something that I really pride myself on, and that's something I'm very confident on. And so I think for me, there was such a sense of fulfillment or meaning with the fact that I could bring individuals on that I really believe in, that I know are doing really good work in the world, and essentially create a platform that makes it less confusing for other men. Because I felt like I was in the jungle and I just had my machete and I just had to move through it, and I didn't have a path. And I wish I had a path. And I think in some ways, I want to create a path that might not require as much suffering as I needed.
It's beautiful.
So,
Yeah, thank
yeah.
you, bro. And so you kind of touch into this one around relationships and sexuality, right? And of course, that's embedded deeply into this idea of masculinity as well. I want to sort of frame up a little bit of question, right? So, I mean, you and I have spent a little bit of time exploring, yeah, like Tantra, Neo Tantra, polarity, and of course, relationship. I think there's a few things that I'm interested in, but like, what misconceptions do you come up against, both with your male clients and how they're received by their partners when you start to explore concepts around masculinity and sexuality? And what are some of the difficulties that you work with, like in real tenderness and vulnerable places with men around their own sexuality?
I don't think a lot of men that I work with have ever really asked themselves the question of what it means to be a man to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So not like getting some like myopic way of looking at this is what it means to be a man, but really getting curious about who are they as a man.
Yeah.
And I think in many ways as well, what a lot of men that I work with suffer under is just this deep state of disconnection from themselves.
Yes.
So they are divorced from a relationship to themselves.
Yes.
So naturally, as a result of that, their capacity and their ability to be in relationship to another individual is very, very limited. Like that capacity to be sensitive and to attune to the other person, to really see the other person and to really notice what's going on with the individual in front of them, how they're impacting someone, how they're making someone feel safe or unsafe, how they're opening up their partners, but also closing them. I think this is a language that most men have never learned.
Well, yeah, this is great, right? So I think like two questions then. One is, why do you think that hasn't been learned and or taught, right? And then the other one is, what do you think is some of the antidotes to this situation that you see in men so much?
Well, I would say they've never learned this because they usually come from backgrounds, whether it's their familial structure or, uh, the environment that they had surrounded themselves in, where they didn't have that as well.
Yeah. So it's a multi-generational, hereditary, yeah, situation, societal problem
Yeah.
where it's just there's a
I
yeah,
absolutely see that as a really big component. I
yeah,
really see as well just the absence, particularly around um, fathers, really creating a strong impact on a lot of men.
yeah,
And I would say a lot of men are suffering under either the absence of their father or the tyranny of their fathers,
yeah. It's
and
good.
then not wanting to be like their fathers.
Yeah,
And then as a result, they divorce themselves
yeah,
from, essentially very vital aspects of themselves. So an example of that would be many men that I work with and speak with have really experienced the dysfunction and the destruction essentially of their father's anger or misuse of power.
it's good, right? I wanna slow this down here. This is really it's really sweet, but there's something here as well, which is just around like your own desire to become a father.
Mm.
And as you feel into that, how does your experience of early childhood, your father, your work with masculinity and society, how does that shape how you are approaching this concept of actually becoming a father yourself? What are some of the things that you're navigating?
Yeah. I would have never said up until maybe a year and a half ago that I want to be a father.
Yeah, that's big.
Yeah. So
Thank
I
you.
just want to acknowledge that.
Yeah, so
And
why was that?
because I didn't believe, I just saw the suffering that I went through,
Yes.
and there is no way in hell that I wanted another child to go through the same suffering that I
That's
went
really
through.
big, bro. I'm like super touched by that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so acknowledging that pain and suffering that you've gone through, and you wanted to be in a position to actually ensure that that wouldn't happen again, right? And what is it alive within you a year ago that has shifted?
Mm. Yeah. Now I'm somewhat touched. Um, yeah, I was in a very special relationship, and I had realized the value that I had brought to this woman
Mm,
and the ways that I had supported her on her journey of becoming the woman that she is today.
mm.
Um, and I had, I guess, realized that I have a lot more to offer than I had maybe initially thought.
It's beautiful, right? I think the deeper part here is we do all the men's work and it's meaningless unless we're in relationship
Yeah.
to women, right?
Yeah.
And it's wonderful. It's really sweet. And so, yeah, sort of moving forward, I wonder what are some of the things that you're seeking in relationship? What are some of the things now that are helping to build that confidence within you around the potentiality of creating life?
Yeah. Numerous things. I mean, I think first of all, there is such a need for compatibility. I think that's the first one, so aligned values, aligned vision, aligned purpose of the relationship. I think
Mm.
I think that's a really important
Mm-hmm.
question to ask oneself. And I actually have this from two teachers called Michaela Bohm and Steve James, who I've
Mm.
both had on the podcast as well. And they asked this question to their clients called, what is the purpose of your relationship? And I think that is such a powerful question to ask
It's
oneself.
very intentional, isn't it? Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
intentional. And um, I think this is something that I'd really been reflecting on, and this is as well the depth of intention that I really want to bring into a relationship. I see willingness an absolutely integral part of the type of relationship culture that I want to create, whether it's with myself, but also like that's the commitment. That's what I really require from a partner as well. Um,
What are the parts of you that are a little bit difficult to be with sometimes that they're going to have to navigate? What would you need in them, right? Because I know this one. Like I'm a total pain in the ass sometimes, be it in the work
yeah,
environment or back at
yeah,
home, right?
yeah,
And I know, like what's needed to meet
yeah,
that sometimes, right?
yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, I think like this is something I'm getting a little bit more vocal about, and as well a lot more accepting of is I'm not an easy partner to be with.
yeah,
And I think the reason why is because I know myself so well.
yeah.
I know what I need, I know what I require, but also I know what I'm a stand for when it comes to truth and when it comes to love. And I'm willing to call anything out that I see that is just, maybe the absence of that, let's just say.
Why is that a problem? I mean, it is, but I want to
Yeah, 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 yeah,
know.
yeah. Because essentially it takes away from the depth of connection that we can have. And usually I see that it creates just a lot of hurt in
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah, it's difficult. Huh?
Yeah.
And then what I'm hearing as well is it's coming from this good-natured place of you wanting really high standards and yeah, self-awareness and
Yeah.
yeah, truth and integrity, right?
Big
That
time.
comes back to that value there
Big
as
time.
well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful, bro. So yeah, I'm excited to hear how this next sort of chapter unfolds for you
Likewise.
in this aliveness around yeah, having a family and creating life. Um, yeah, when it comes to that, then what kind of father do you hope to be?
Hmm.
Just if you wanted to
Yeah.
popcorn out some quality, just some words like,
A present father,
yeah,
emotionally attuned father,
yeah,
a playful father,
yeah,
yeah, a silly father,
yeah,
um, an understanding father,
yeah,
um, hmm, a stable father.
yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
like a robust father, but also an honest father.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you.
Mm.
When you contemplate everything that's been alive on the podcast with Heart of Man, these conversations around masculinity and the suffering of men, I wonder, like, what do you still think is lacking in the space? What do you think needs to be said more?
You mean within this podcast?
More so like within the world of like podcasts directed to men and men's and masculinity and understanding and awareness. Like, what are things that you've come across either in your own personal journey or with working with clients that you still think is lacking in the space or that needs to be spoken to more? I mean, another way of putting it is, what's really important that you still think needs to be said again and again?
Yeah. I just think I just really believe in the importance of creating a cohesive, holistic, and very integrative roadmap around being a man, but also the work that is really required. And, really to me, like the intersection of numerous different things had become very important to me and are also expressions within my work. So, for me, it is really about, first of all, men's development. So having some form of understanding who we are uniquely as men, but also what it really means to us and who's the man that really wants to come through us. So for me, it's really about having a deeper understanding of ourselves, which is an ongoing process of really coming to discover ourselves. I see really a critical piece around emotional regulation and emotional fluidity that's necessary, but also not getting overly identified with it at the same time. And I think this is also an edge that I see not many are walking very elegantly in my eyes. So we either have emotional suppression, and I think it comes to a great cost, particularly when we still have a lot of accumulated experiences from childhood or from our developmental years that have not really been processed and completed. Because frankly, during that time when we actually doing that work, there's going to be a lot of emotional processing. And that's definitely been my experience. And it's through those years, if we're shaming the fact that a man is emotionally processing, we're actually interrupting his capacity to move through that. And my assertion is when a man has cleared a lot of that, he's not going to be as emotionally erratic naturally. But I think there is still a need or a capacity required to be emotionally fluid depending on what's in front of us, depending on the events that happen, depending on the situation that arises, because life will impact us, whether it's, heartbreak or whether it's a confronting moment where someone confronts us in a, really harmful and maybe abusive even way. There's all kinds of different ways that life impacts us. And I think our ability or inability to be with the emotionality that naturally arises of as a result of being humans, I think that creates a lot of damage when we're divorced from that. So I think that's the first element that I want to say as well. I think it's essential for a man to really work with his nervous system and to really work on creating a deeper nervous system capacity, but also learn the difference between capacity and resilience. So I would say widening his capacity, and that's something I've really done a lot of work on, but also learning how to come back to one's baseline after those moments of hyperarousal, let's just say, because that's essentially what keeps us vital and alive and resilient and robust throughout long periods of time. So those are two elements. I would absolutely say relationships is a really important element to address. And I think it just really begins with one's relationship to oneself. And then as a result, as well, an extension to um, the relationship to another. And, I really want to thank as well individuals such as John Wineland and David Data, who have really taught me a lot about relationships and also how to bring leadership to a relationship. And I think a really big aspect as well that is missed is sexuality and just the importance of really bringing this conversation, out from the shadows, let's just say, and really spending intimate time with that. And I think what's really important is for a man to really come into relationship to his own sexuality in the absence of a partner to begin with. and to really connect to that within himself first, and notice all the ways he might be leaking out within his sexual energy, and learning to actually contain that, but actually learning as well to move that. And then how we want to bring that into relationship with another person. So I think that's a long-winded answer. And then, of course, the conversation as well arises around self-leadership, and the question is, what do I require in order to really be robust, mentally, physically, emotionally, relationally, sexually, spiritually, financially. So I think those are some of the deeper layers. I don't think there is one thing that men require.
Yeah.
I think they really require someone who actually has that range and that capacity to really see the entire spectrum of what's really needed, because I see it really all coming together in a harmonious ecosystem.
It's beautiful. Yeah, I kind of like the way that you use that sexy, trendy word holistic, but then you go into a very detailed and thorough answer afterwards of what that actually means for you, and the importance of each area as well. I think that's great. I want to build on that and just go into, like, when you're working with some clients, just like a reflection, like what have been some meaningful, like, aha or breakthrough moments, or what do those look like for you when you're working with a client?
Yeah.
Yeah, what have been some sessions there where you've come away and you've been like, yeah, that was potent.
I think some of the most potent moments come from me when individuals bring awareness to, let's just say, a certain identity that they had been holding on to, or a certain belief structure, or a certain subtext through which they had seen the world, and the ways that they had been completely oblivious to that. And just the awareness of it, there's something about it that can be incredibly liberating for the individual, but also healing to the fact that, I think many of the clients as well that I work with, like, they struggle, and then they'll use it in these terms. They struggle under quote unquote self-sabotage, not knowing the ways that they're, like, with their bodies and their nervous systems is inherently wise and is essentially seeking to protect them. And I think in so many ways I have this capacity for, like, to see what is the core thing, what is the root thing that is being protected with the very pattern that they're living out and playing out. And I think it's just by drawing their awareness to these more tender aspects of themselves that, let's just say, have been in the basement for many decades, and for them to come into, I'm going to say, relationship to those aspects of themselves. So, this would be really through the use of a lot of parts work. They come into deeper connection to themselves in ways that they had never known was possible. And when I just see the level of compassion that comes through,
Yeah.
when I see the level of inner peace that comes through, when I see the level of gratitude that comes through, like, that is meaningful to me.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It kind of relates back to that initial kind of shift in your own level of awareness around your own journey, going from this space of having a perception that you are broken and needed to be fixed, to this recognition that my body's infinitely wise. I have these behaviors that have kept me safe. Maybe they're no longer serving me. And then there's just deeper sense of compassion.
Yeah.
What is it, do you think, that's been some of the more potent things, more poignant things in your own journey that have allowed you to deepen your sense of self-compassion and soften back some of those more critical, narratives that might be living within you?
Yeah. I think it was really important for me to do this work in relationship to others. And I needed to work with individuals. Like, I've had around my journey roughly a dozen mentors by now.
Yeah.
And I would, really include you as the closest of those individuals.
Yeah.
And I really needed to work with them in numerous different capacities, whether it was in group environments, whether it was in very intimate one-to-one settings. And I think it was in those places where I really needed to openly share, like, some of these belief structures, thoughts, the feelings that were moving through me. But it was also really impactful for me in so many ways, how they would reflect back to me what they were seeing and who they were seeing me as. Like one of the moments that really stood out for me, like I recall one moment actually very recently from our last container where I had communicated the fact that in some ways I was still feeling frustration around the fact that things don't seem to be moving along as fast as I would like them to. And, we had spoken and we had addressed some of the experiences that I had gone through. And I think without going maybe too directly into the context of what we were experiencing, because I don't think it's valuable here right now, I, I I had this perception that you didn't fully understand the experiences that I was going through or went through. And I had sought to really share that with you. And you had mentioned to me that you've had felt very touched by the fact that, I had started out where I started out and who um, I am now as a result of the work that I've done. And, I had said it in my own words, it's like a living miracle that I've really survived this entire journey. And just the way that you had met me in that moment and just allowed yourself to be impacted by what I had said gave me an opportunity to actually see myself through your eyes. And that gave me an access point for deeper compassion. And I had
Yeah.
numerous moments of that.
It's super sweet to hear that right now and receive that and have that being shared as well. I love this idea of self-leadership and self-reliance, and then at the same time there's this acknowledgement that we're relational beings and we heal in relationship, especially when the hurt has been relational. I think a little bit actually just last night when you were leading a circle and you were witnessed by your peers. And one of the things that we've created in the culture of Breathwork Bali is that peer kind of like recognition. How did it feel last night to be sitting there at dinner and reflecting? We had people who are in the training space who are sort of, a good year and a half, 2 years behind you.
Yeah.
And you've actually shared some of your stories with them. And that's been really impactful and meaningful. How does it feel now to think about what you achieved last night and where you're at in terms of the work that we do here at Breathwork Bali?
I feel pride.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel pride.
Yeah.
And I came out of that session, I'm feeling very thankful. First of all, for my willingness to actually move through those very uncomfortable moments, 3, 4 years ago when I would first lead a circle and I would just fumble through my words and then I would lose track of what I was saying and then there's a shame spiral that starts kicking in. And just that willingness to actually have these moments and just move through it so I can actually come and lead a 2-hour circle in the ways that I did yesterday without any of those hangups that I had prior, that is meaningful to me.
Yeah, it's really sweet. There's just a lot of vulnerability here as well around, sharing that process that you've been through and the difficulty which this process is, right? We're asking, it's a highly skilled thing. We kind of talked about how we don't have the experience when we start out and we're probably not going to naturally be very good at it.
Yeah.
And the only way that we're going to get better is by trying, and you have to sort of throw yourself into the ring.
Yeah. And what really excites me about that as well is that because I've done it, I really know that others can do it as
It's
well.
wonderful, isn't it?
Like,
There's a belief, there's a deep belief in it.
There is such a conviction in that. And sometimes I'm like a bigger stand for my clients and what I believe they can move through than they might be.
Yeah, this is a beautiful reflection back to them, right? Yeah. Because you've walked this path, you know it is possible, and you're grounded in healthy hope and a deep sense of pride that's been reflected to you by other members of the community and mentors. And also those people are going to challenge you directly when they can see that you're not showing up in a good way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to be challenged as well.
Yeah, well, it's great, right? And, I think also, I think it's important that we acknowledge that there is a need as a teacher, coach, mentor to challenge, right? And to be sometimes confrontational, provocative with that sense of deep compassion and love as well. It's great. Yeah, I want to shift gears a little bit, start looking forward, just to get sort of the mind in that kind of gear. If you had $400,000 to invest,
100,000?
400.
400.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just a number I was
Yeah.
kind of guessing, right? I was kind of like 100's not enough, a million's too much. I was like $400,000. Like you can make some impact with that, but you can't waste it, right? So
Yeah.
you got $400,000.
Yeah.
What is it that you would create with that? What is it that is alive in you that feels really important and connects to so many of your beliefs and values?
Well, I think the first thing that comes up is I think there would be a desire to bring more access to this podcast to more individuals. So I would love to create more reach with it because I really believe in it. And if I look at, the 52 episodes that I've brought out and all the guests that I've brought out, like they're hand selected by me. And I knew that these are the type of individuals that I want to speak with. And I know it's valuable. And I want to create more reach for that. So that would mean for me, probably, focusing a lot more on creating even better visuals, creating even better experience for individuals to really create, a lot more reach. So I think that's one element. Maybe as well bringing episodes out weekly versus bi-weekly, the way that I'm doing it now. So I think that's the first element. Um, I don't think one can really do that for 400,000. But I think I definitely have a vision for the future of creating some form of um, retreat center or some form of center where I could really bring these teachings together and yeah, essentially create containers where individuals can come.
What is it about having land and a space and that coming together of men? What is it about that that's important for you or shaped you and impacted you? And why do you want to share that with others?
Because I think it's been important on my journey.
Yeah.
I know how there's been moments in my life where things had just been so difficult and where I had just been so close up front to the challenges that were presenting themselves. And I know how valuable at times it was for me to really be in these very intimate containers where I would very deliberately, turn everything off, from the outside world and really just focus on myself. And, essentially the retreat would create an experience for me where I would get to know myself on a deeper level in relationship to myself, but also in relationship to others. And there would be a deepening, there would be a growth. And usually I would step out of such experiences, and the way that I would then meet my life would be in a very different way. And there is something incredibly inspiring about that. The ways that it has deeply supported me, and the ways I would love to support other individuals in creating perhaps even, some form of, I don't know if refuge is the right word, but like environment where they can bring the challenges that they might be facing in their day to day and deliberately bring them into the container and work through them so they can come out and, essentially be able to now interact with them with more confidence, with more inner peace, with more excitement and inspiration.
That's beautiful. If when Alex Lehmann goes on vacation, what's like a dream vacation coming up for you in the next like 6 months or a year? If you could plan dream vacation, what does that look like?
A lot of adventure.
Yeah.
A
And
lot
that
of
means
adventure.
newness, like not visiting somewhere you visited before or
Yeah, yeah, a lot of novelty,
Yeah.
a lot of excitement.
Yeah.
Like I have this vision of getting on a motorbike and really maybe exploring various different mountains that I can climb.
Spontaneity here. Yeah,
Spontaneity.
there's just a wildness to it.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I like
Ruggedness.
wildness.
Yeah.
However, I must say over the years, and I want to thank my past partners for that. I do like luxury as well now.
Yeah, nice. Yeah.
So I think there would be a combination
Blend
of
of
that,
those.
a good blend of that.
Yeah, beautiful, bro. Really good. Want to look forward, just thinking about. I mean, you've engaged with so many different teachers. The top of the field in the fields that you've chosen to engage in. What is it now? What's this next frontier for you? You're constantly pushing your own personal frontier. What is it that you're now excited about and moving into?
I'm really excited about creating a very cohesive system now through which I can bring all these learnings and all these teachings and bring them to other individuals in a very experiential way that is very unique and very creative, and as well is very authentic to me. I want to, of course, use the learnings that I've had from others as inspiration, but I want to see how can I bring them through in my own very unique ways.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And I think in many ways, I'm really seeing that this is going to be a very creative phase of my life. And yeah, I see that there's going to be retreats that I want to be holding very soon, group containers that will be very intimate, but also will have a capacity for men to really learn um, or create intimacy with other men and really like do life together essentially,
That's good.
or work through challenges together and really, essentially come from an environment where they might not have all these skills that I had addressed, and they can come out of that and feel like, wow, like I really know how to lead my life now.
It's good.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot that you've synthesized and practiced and embodied. Is there something that you're excited to learn more of, and is there a teacher that you're looking towards, either found or something, an area that you want to just explore more of coming up?
Yeah. There's so many different areas where I would like to go more deeply into. Um, I definitely see that there's an interest in going more further into breath work and body work. I think particular around the body work element, I would say, I'm a very good breath worker, but I think as a body worker, there is still great room for improvement. So I see a desire for that. I see an interest as well in deepening access points for men to work through their sexual challenges in ways that feel integral to me. And, I've explored Tantra for around 3 years now, and I'm so grateful for the path that I've been on with it and all the things that I'd learned. But I also recognize I would never bring the teachings through in the ways that they're being passed on there.
Yeah, it's good. What is it that you want to see more of for men?
More awareness around where it comes up, but also more integrity and more capacity to actually, and also just, I want them to work through a lot of their shame around it as well.
Yeah,
I think that's a really big aspect
it's a
of
tough one to sell.
Yeah.
It's good.
You want to work through your sexual shame?
Yeah, let's just get into some sexual shame and we'll work on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Based on that, like who's an ideal client for you, or like who is someone you're excited about working with, or what? Yeah, just want to frame that up a little bit. You're not.
Yeah.
I mean, are you enjoying entry level clients, or is it someone that's done a bit of work? Like, how does that?
Definitely not entry level clients
Yeah.
anymore. And
Yeah.
I've very
Yeah.
much enjoyed that at the beginning of
Yeah.
my coaching career, but not so much anymore. I guess I'm really excited of working with individuals who have um, created a lot of external success for themselves
Yes.
and had, essentially needed and required to build a certain mindset in order to build something in the world. And some of my favorite clients have garnered a certain level of material, but also financial success. And they had come to that, let's say, goal that they had sought to achieve, and they're somewhat disappointed, realizing it's not really giving them what it is that
They've got
really
the shiny
wanting.
things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They got the shiny things.
And they're hollow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
I think where they're particularly getting hit up against
Yeah.
is relationships.
Yeah. Yeah.
And their relationship might feel flat. Their partner might be threatening a divorce or an end of the relationship, or they had just come out of a relationship. And I think it's very meaningful for me to work with such individuals because I know they have really needed to develop a lot within themselves to actually build what they had built. But now they are essentially supported in areas within their lives that they had never really looked at or worked on.
Yeah.
And I see those are individuals who are really have a certain level of willingness, a certain level of, I'm going to say maturity as well, that are as well willing to work through some of this stuff. And I also see with some of the individuals, with the influence that they have, with maybe the companies they lead or the employees that they support, I think there is a sense of fulfillment when I recognize, oh, because of the work that they do, they're going to show up differently with their wife or their partner or their children or their employees or just simply, like someone on the streets. And I think that that is something that's very meaningful to me.
Yeah, it's beautiful. More impact there as well. Yeah, it's good. Lots of good things there. We're starting to get into the final kind of moments here of our time in these seats this way around. Got a really good sense of, yeah, how your own personal journey and story has shaped you, some of the motivations and difficulties and challenges, and then, yeah, how you're sharing that with the world now and really recognizing this transitional phase of you've been on this quest, a chapter of, yeah, so much gathering of skill and experience. And now it sounds like you're moving into a space of coalescing, cohesing, and bringing a lot of your own kind of flavor to all of this. And that's really alive in you and about to be shared. I'm excited for that. In closing, I want to circle back to death. Yeah. And it kind of, it seems fitting, but you've had a unique time as a paramedic and it was really potent, and it kind of struck me as well in your ability to be with people in those dying moments. I want to frame it up in sort of two parts. One is like, again, just thinking about the level of regret, if there was anything else as a common thread that you noticed in those moments. And then I want to inquire a little bit into, yeah, the inevitable, yeah, last breath. What is it that you would like to have a sense of accomplishment through your time here, through Heart of Man, through your retreat center, through the programs? What is it that you're seeking in that last exhale?
All right. A lot here. So I'll go into the first part of the question first. It's interesting because when I had mentioned the regret that I noticed within a lot of individuals, often it wasn't necessarily something spoken. So I just want to as well acknowledge that this was just something that I sensed with some of the individuals. And truthfully, with some individuals, they were actually willing to speak about it. But I think a big one that was really present for a lot of individuals is that they hadn't lived a life true to themselves. And I think that was a really great pain that it appears to me a lot of people experienced. And I think I was very close to what I was getting hit up against at the time because I was really not living a life in any way where I was honoring myself and where I was authentic to myself and I was real and I was really honest with how I wanted to lead my life and what I really want. Frankly, I didn't even know these things. And I think that really impacted me. I think also just the absence of connection that I'd felt with so many of these individuals, and like it was such a, I could feel how sometimes me bringing interest to these individuals, it was such a fresh of breath air for them, because no one in their lives actually had um, given them that, and so I had, I guess maybe through osmosis, just recognized the value of connection and relationship. Uh, because they didn't really they weren't so concerned about the things that they achieved or didn't achieve or whatever lives they had lived. It was really more about these things at the end of their day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm doing a good job in
Well,
answering
it
that.
sounds to me like there's just the two things. One is that you valued connection so much more deeply, and there was an awareness, that was an absence of that in your own life. And then with that, the power of care. Yeah, but either when you were caring for these individuals, but also how they were receiving that care and how important that was.
Yeah. I think another aspect of it is maybe just what I notice as well is the helplessness and the powerlessness of their situation. and their maybe desire to change something, but they now know they couldn't.
Yes.
And that was really tough to see.
Yeah.
And I think there was one instance that hit me more than anything, that I think actually gave me the motivation to really do things that were just so far out there that I had never done before. And it was one individual. And again, it was a very, like, if we think about it from, numerous different things I did as a paramedic, it was a very innocent act. Essentially, it was just a transportation from the hospital to the hospice. But what I didn't realize is that the individual that we're bringing to the hospice was my age at the time. So there we go into the patient's room, and there is this beautiful woman who I'm discovering has cancer throughout her entire body. And, essentially there was this recognition that she's not going to be continuing this life. And I had just sensed the level of despair that was coming through, and the level of hopelessness. And I had really felt in her. And I wish I had, been more honest and had more maybe real conversations with her about it. But I just had a sense that she didn't want to leave, and she didn't want this to be the end of her life.
Yeah.
And that was humbling for me, because here I was, naturally struggling with, the challenges that I had, which were valid, but I was not living my life. And here's someone who deeply wants to live her life, but can't
Yeah.
anymore. I think there's something that I took from that experience where I was like, I can't live this way anymore. I actually had a near drowning experience 1.5 months later. I don't know if we ever spoken about that. So I had my own experience as well of almost, let's just say, dying in Thailand. But that kind of reinforced just as well the importance of needing to look at this topic. So
It's a nice light one I bring. I open with your flavor of ice cream, and we're closing off with contemplations of death, right? Which is a nice
I'm
journey.
actually very happy that you're doing that, because I think it's such an important conversation to have, because I believe when we embrace death as we're living, we live a more meaningful and we live a more intentional life when we're
Did that near drowning experience change the way that you were appreciating, your experience here?
big time. Yeah, but I think it's also teaching me. I think at the time, to be honest with you, I couldn't really appreciate it in the same ways. I think maybe there was some potentially some post-traumatic stress I was navigating. I remember I needed to go to the hospital and get stitches on my head because I was in a cave and I was hitting my head up against the cave and couldn't really get out. I couldn't find an access point.
Mm.
And I remember as I was driving to the hospital, I was calling my mom and said, like, I'm not going to be going home, because at the time I had, my life was already sorted for the next 10 years in the sense of the plan that I had. And, I was going to do an internship and become a dentist. And that's what I had like set out to do. And then I had canceled all those plans and said, no, um, whatever I'm doing here, I don't know what this is, but I'm feeling that this is actually having an impact on my life. And I need to continue on this path.
It's very.
So it brought me on that. But I think, especially over the last few years, um, as I've been contemplating death a little bit more, I think I've really been reflecting on the type of life that I want to lead day to day that will allow me to actually, um, take that last breath and feel a sense of appreciation for the life that I had. And I don't want to, I don't want to go into the entire exercise, but one of the things that we contemplated with John had been this exploration around, like, what would be the best possible death that we could have, and what would be the worst possible death that we could have. And without, exploring too much of the exercise around it, it was very cathartic for me to really inquire into that and look into that and go through the process that we had gone through. And what I'd realized for myself is that at the end of my best possible death, what I could really just wish and hope for is just to be really surrounded by the individuals that I love, that I care for. And, I see a wife, I see children, I see my friends, and um, I see joy, I see laughter. I see gratitude, I see playfulness, and I see deep connection. I think that's essentially how I want to leave this life, and I want to leave with this notion that I've done the best that I could. I've really done the best that I could, and maybe not so much with like a big legacy that I've created, but I want to know that just through my way of being, I had touched other people, and I had hmm, yeah, I left a mark on people in a way that
Mm.
yeah, made them feel grateful that I was there.
It's a graceful exhale. Yeah, it's a perfect way to close out our time together.
Yeah.
Yeah, a big thanks for allowing me to sit in this seat and to go through this process. And as always, it's been a deep learning in relationship to you and to this set and setting. And yeah, I'm really appreciative that I got to do this, and that also that hopefully the listeners will get a better sense of you as a human and understand, the motivation and importance of this work, Heart of Man, and your continued mission.
Yeah. And also just want to take a moment just to thank you as well. First of all, for this very generous gift, and I still feel very humbled by it. And yeah, just the ways that you had been so generous with me over the years, and I learned so much about being a man, and um, how to be in relationship to myself, but also in relationship to others through you. So, I just want to say like what an impact you've had on my life, and just the ways that like I really feel your care here, and I really feel your like willingness and your desire to support me in this, and really have others as well see me, and that just means so much to me, man. So
Yeah,
thank you,
really
man.
touched by that. Thank you.
All right, everyone. I hope you got a lot of value from this conversation. I noticed there was a bit of a different quality of me that came through, a bit more raw, a bit more messy, a little bit more fumbling around, let's just say. But I think there is a deeper desire for me to really be seen in my rawness and my authenticity. And I really hope that you received something out of this. And yeah, if you feel that someone else could benefit from this conversation, please ensure to pay it forward. And until next time, signing out.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Your time and attention is truly appreciated. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe to stay tuned for my upcoming episodes. And in case you know somebody who would find this episode helpful, I encourage you to pay it forward. Finally, if you've personally been receiving value from the show, one way you're able to support this podcast is by leaving a 5-star rating and a written review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Not only does this help more people find the show, but it also supports me in bringing more incredible guests on for the future. I'm your host, Alex Lehmann, and until next time, signing off.